You're watching Smile and Scars, where real legends meet their moments of truth, stories of strength, pride, and the lessons only pain can teach. So sit back, relax, and let's dive into today's story, the one where a 2.5-Metre giant challenged Steven Seagal, saying, "You're too old to fight me." But what happened next became a lesson this giant would never forget. It was a quiet morning in Los Angeles. The city was just waking up. The streets smelled of rain, and the sound of distant traffic echoed like the rhythm of another day. Steven Seagal, the martial arts icon turned actor, was enjoying a rare peaceful morning at his dojo, the place where his true self still lived. He wasn't filming, he wasn't surrounded by cameras or fans. It was just him, the tatami mats, and the calm spirit of discipline. But peace has a strange way of attracting chaos. Outside the dojo, a crowd had gathered, not for an autograph, not for a selfie, but for a fight. At the center of that crowd stood a man so large, he looked unreal. Standing at nearly 2.5 meters tall, almost 8 feet of muscle and arrogance. His name was Igor Volkov, a Russian-born mixed martial artist who'd recently gone viral for his brutal knockouts in underground cage fights. His nickname, the Giant of Siberia, Igor was known for his power, but more than that, for his ego. He had one goal, to prove he was the toughest man alive. And what better way to do that than by defeating a legend, the man who once made the world believe in unshakable calm and unstoppable power, Steven Seagal. So Igor came to Los Angeles, cameras rolling, live stream ready. He shouted at the dojo gates, his deep voice shaking the quiet street. "Seagal, you hide behind your movies. You are too old to fight. Come out and face a real man." The crowd laughed, phones pointed, whispers growing. Inside, Seagal paused his breathing meditation. He didn't react instantly, that was never his way. He just took one long, silent breath. His assistant, a younger black belt named Jordan, rushed in. "Sensei, there's a man outside, a massive guy. He's shouting your name, challenging you." Seagal slowly rose from the mat, tying his black belt with calm precision. "Jordan," he said in his deep, steady voice, "when people shout, it's because they are afraid that silence will show their weakness." And with that, he walked toward the door. Outside, Igor was pacing, slamming his massive fists together. The crowd parted like water as Seagal stepped out, calm, still, unbothered. His presence alone quieted half the noise. Igor smirked. "This is the great Steven Seagal. You look tired, old man. I will show the world that your movies are fake." Seagal looked him in the eyes. "Do you know what the word budo means?" he asked. Igor frowned. "I didn't come here to talk." Seagal took another step closer, his gaze unshaken. "Budo means the way of the warrior. It's not about fighting, it's about peace. But sometimes peace needs to defend itself." The crowd grew silent. Cameras were up, comments were flooding in online. Everyone wanted to see if the old legend still had it, if this was finally the day someone would humble the calm master. Igor dropped his bag and raised his fists. "Let's see your peace defend you now." But Seagal didn't raise his hands. He just stood there, still. "Not here," he said. "This is a place of learning. If you want a fight, we'll do it with respect." Minutes later, they stood inside the dojo. Barefoot, no crowd, just the sound of the wind outside, and two men facing each other on the mat. Jordan watched nervously from the corner. He'd seen Seagal fight before, but this man, this giant, was on another level of size and strength. Igor charged like a bull, the floor trembling under his weight. Seagal moved one step, just one, and the attack missed completely. The giant stumbled forward, confused. Seagal's voice was calm. "You have power, but no balance," Igor roared, throwing a roundhouse kick that whistled through the air. Seagal ducked, spun, and in a blink tapped Igor's arm, redirecting his weight perfectly. The giant crashed to the mat with a thunder that shook the walls. The silence was instant. Igor stood, embarrassed, fury in his eyes. "That was luck," he shouted. Seagal shook his head slowly. "There's no luck in harmony." Igor rushed again, faster, angrier, this time swinging like a machine. Seagal stepped aside, caught his wrist, and in one fluid motion, used Aikido's signature technique. a joint lock so smooth it looked effortless. Igor was forced down again, his arm twisted, pain flashing across his face. Your strength, Seagal said, holding him in control, is nothing without control. Igor gasped, trying to break free, but Seagal released him and stepped back. Go home, he said. Train your mind before your muscles, but Igor didn't leave. He stood shaking with rage, blood trickling from his elbow. You think this is over? He growled. Tomorrow I bring my team. We'll see if your piece can stop 5 men. And he stormed out, slamming the dojo door. Jordan rushed to Seagal. Sensei, you can't fight 5 men. They're dangerous, these underground fighters. They'll come back. Seagal looked out the window at the fading sunset. Then they'll learn something new tomorrow. That night, the video of the encounter went viral. Millions watched as Seagal dropped the 2.5-Metre fighter with barely any effort. Some praised him, others mocked him, saying the fight was staged, that the giant had gone easy on him. But those who knew Seagal's history, the years of discipline, the mastery of Aikido, the real-life law enforcement experience, they knew better. And as the night grew darker, Seagal meditated once again, not in fear, but in preparation, because he knew. This was far from over. The next morning, before dawn, the sound of motorcycles echoed down the street. Igor had returned, this time with 4 other fighters, all built like tanks, all ready to prove that strength could crush wisdom. Seagal opened his eyes, already awake. Jordan rushed in. They're here. I know, Seagal said quietly. He stood, his expression calm as ever, and walked toward the door once again. Outside, the 5 men stood waiting. Igor sneered. Told you I'd be back, old man. This time, no cameras, no tricks, just pain. Seagal stepped forward. Pain, he said, is a teacher, and you're about to learn your first lesson. Jordan whispered, Sensei, should I call the police? Seagal's answer was simple. Police come after the fight. I'll stop it before it starts. And with that, the legend took his stance, soft, balanced, and deadly calm, as the 5 men surrounded him, ready to strike. But what happened next, no one expected. The morning air was heavy with tension. 5 men stood around Steven Seagal, their boots scraping against the floor of the dojo, the same sacred space that had seen countless lessons in peace. And now it was about to witness violence. Igor, the 2.5-Metre giant, cracked his knuckles and smiled, the arrogance in his eyes burning like fire. No cameras this time, Seagal. No crowd, just you and us. Let's see if your so-called way of the warrior can save you now. But Seagal stood silent, his hands relaxed by his side, breathing slow, steady, like a mountain that refused to move. You still don't understand, he said softly. The moment you fight with anger, you've already lost. Igor sneered. Enough talk. In a flash, one of the men lunged forward, fast, brutal, swinging a wild punch aimed straight at Seagal's face. Seagal didn't even blink. With a simple shift of his weight, he redirected the punch, caught the attacker's wrist, and flipped him effortlessly over his shoulder. The man hit the mat so hard the air left his lungs with a groan. Another charged from behind, grabbing Seagal's neck, but Seagal twisted, trapping the man's arm and locking it in an Aikido hold. A pop echoed as the man screamed in pain. Igor roared, "Stop holding back, crush him." The other 3 rushed in together. Seagal moved like water, calm, fluid, unstoppable. One kick to the ribs, one palm strike to the throat, one sweep that dropped the biggest of them. Every move was minimal, precise, the perfect dance of discipline. Within seconds, 4 men lay groaning on the mat. Only Igor remained standing, his eyes wide with disbelief. You tricked me. You think you're some kind of god." Seagal took a step closer, his gaze steady. "No, just a man who learned to listen before he strikes." But Igor wasn't listening. With a roar that shook the walls, the giant charged, his massive arms swinging like wrecking balls. Seagal sidestepped the first swing, but the second grazed his shoulder. The impact was heavy, but Seagal barely moved. He turned, his expression calm but focused now. The crowd outside the dojo, drawn by the noise, began gathering again. Phones lifted, whispers spread through the air. He's fighting 5 guys. No way he's still standing. That's Seagal, man, that's him. Igor grabbed a bamboo staff from the weapons rack and swung it like a club. The wood whistled through the air, Seagal ducked, twisted, and in one lightning, fast motion, disarmed Igor and snapped the staff in half with a sharp strike to his knee. Igor stumbled, roaring in pain. Seagal circled him, slow and deliberate. "You still don't see it, do you?" Seagal said, his deep voice cutting through the silence. "Strength is not in size, it's in stillness. Shut up," Igor yelled and threw a wild punch. Seagal caught it, just caught it. And in one effortless move, twisted the giant's arm, swept his leg, and dropped him flat on his back. The floor shook as Igor's massive frame hit the ground. The dojo went silent. The only sound was Igor's heavy breathing. Seagal stepped over him, calm as ever. "I told you yesterday, train your mind before your muscles." Igor groaned, clutching his arm. How did you move like that? You're too fast." Seagal looked down at him. "Because I never fight. I just end fights." He turned and walked toward the door. But just as Seagal reached for it, Igor growled and reached for a knife hidden under his belt. The crowd gasped. "He's got a knife!" someone shouted. Igor lunged from behind. Seagal spun around so quickly the human eye could barely follow. He sidestepped, redirected Igor's arm, and slammed him against the wall, the knife clattering to the floor. In a single swift motion, he disarmed and pinned the giant with an Aikido wrist lock that froze him in agony. "You brought a knife into my dojo." Seagal's voice was deep and cold now. "That's disrespect to me and to every warrior who walks this path." Igor's face twisted with pain. "Please, I give up." Seagal let go, but his eyes never left Igor's. "Then remember this. Arrogance destroys the man who carries it." The giant stayed on his knees, silent, broken not just in body but in pride. The police sirens wailed in the distance. Someone from the crowd must have called them. Officers rushed in, ready to break up what they thought was a riot. But the scene stopped them in their tracks. One calm man standing among 5 fallen fighters. One officer asked, "What happened here?" Seagal just replied, "They came looking for strength. I showed them peace. The cops helped the injured men up." Igor looked at Seagal with shame in his eyes. "You could have hurt me badly, but you didn't. Why?" Seagal folded his arms. "Because hurting you wouldn't teach you anything, but losing with honor might." As the police escorted Igor and his team out, one of the younger officers whispered to his partner, "That's Steven Seagal, man, still the real deal." The crowd outside cheered as Seagal stepped into the sunlight. The dojo door closed behind him, and for a moment everything went silent again, just as it had begun. But the story didn't end there. A few weeks later, a video surfaced online, this time not from Seagal's team, but from Igor himself. The giant sat in front of the camera, his tone humble and soft. He said, "I went to America to prove that Steven Seagal was fake. I found out. He's the realest fighter I've ever met. He didn't just beat me, he broke my pride, but he also showed me something I never had: respect." The video went viral. Millions watched as the one surrogate fighter spoke about humility, honor, and what it truly means to be strong. He ended with one line that the internet couldn't stop quoting. "Steven Seagal didn't fight me. He saved me." Back in Los Angeles, Seagal watched the video in silence. Jordan, his young assistant, smiled. He learned the lesson, sensei. Seagal nodded slowly. Even the tallest mountain learns from the wind. And then, as always, he went back to his mat, bowed to the empty dojo, and resumed his meditation, calm, focused, eternal. Because for Steven Seagal, fights came and went, but discipline, that stayed forever. The screen fades to black, and the voice of the narrator, deep and calm, speaks the final words. This was Smile and Scars, where every story leaves a mark and every scar tells a story. Don't forget to subscribe for more real lessons from the legends themselves. The outro music fades in soft Japanese drums and wind chimes as the credits roll.